And so this talk was born out of just my personal experience in doing engagements. Like when I do land on a machine, things that I see often or I work with clients often on as far as local privilege escalation goes in a Windows environment. So first we're going to talk a little bit about some relevant Windows security info, and then we're going to get into some tricks, like I said, from my own personal experience that I think are interesting or I run into a lot. So why should you care about this? If you work on the offensive side and you are doing engagements, this can perhaps help you think of some new things, or maybe it's some new techniques that you haven't seen before. If you are on defense and you want to prevent this kind of thing, I get questions a lot like, why should I care about local privilege escalation? That's not like, if I'm joined to a Windows domain, I really don't care. It's just a local box. Like, why does it really matter? And if that is you, I would encourage you. How many people in here have heard of Mimikatz? Okay, good. A lot of people. If you're not really, if the concept is lost on you that local privilege escalation and becoming a local admin on a box that's joined to a Windows domain often results in the downfall of the entire rest of the domain, I would really encourage you to look up some talks or some papers on Mimikatz and harvesting credentials from LSASS for single sign-on purposes. It's like the new hotness, I guess you could say, in lateral movement within Windows environments. I try and include this in every talk that I give because I think the quote is badass, so I'll give you a second to read it. This is by Dan Guido. He runs Trail of Bits, and he used to do the NYU Poly offensive security curriculum. I think that I really like that quote. Perhaps I'm a little biased because this is the kind of work that I do, but I deal with clients a lot who are building networks without having any kind of understanding of offensive security at all. And that typically leads to not good situations for them. So the keynote was awesome, by the way. Great job. The fact that offense should inform defense and defense is offense's child, I think, is a particularly important fact to remember when designing defenses. So first, we're going to do a little bit of background Windows security information related to local privilege escalation. Windows is divided up into securable objects. And these can be anything on this list as well as a bunch of other things. But the techniques that I'm going to show in this presentation can be applied to any of these securable objects. So one of the things we're going to get into is like files with bad permissions that can apply to registry keys as well and can affect the security model in an interesting way. If you can modify registry keys or modify data within registry keys that are used by privileged services or applications. So just keep in mind that the method in which we go about trying to elevate privileges can be applied in more ways than just the ways that I'm going to show you today. Another important piece of the Windows access control model is the security descriptor. This is basically the security information associated with each securable object, and it contains a lot of different things, but for this presentation I'm mainly going to focus on the discretionary access control list, or the DACL, as well as the access control entries that are inside of that. And then finally, the access token is another important piece of information. This is going to be a blob of data that contains the user's security info. It's going to talk about what groups your user is in, what your username is, as well as the access rights that your user is allowed to go after. So anytime you request access to an object within Windows, Windows does the thing that they call the access check function, which is taking your security descriptor as well as the DLL for the object and determining whether or not you have sufficient privileges to read or write or execute that object. I like to think of it like this, a little more less abstract example, I guess you could say. So you show up to the club with your access token. The object is going to be defined by the DLL, and that object, as well as your access token, is checked by the access check function. Another important piece of Windows security is the mandatory integrity control. This is a feature that was implemented with Vista Forward to provide per process integrity levels that represents kind of the trustworthiness of each object. Here is a very Microsoft-y graph or list for the common integrity levels within Windows. Important to note is that medium integrity levels are mostly what we're going to be talking about, escalating from medium to high integrity levels. When UAC is enabled by default, processes will be spawned with medium integrity levels regardless as to whether or not the user is a local admin or not. But I think that Mario does a much better job of indicating the security integrity levels within Windows. Perhaps even the designers of integrity levels played a bunch of Mario, I don't know. But as you can see, it's fairly straightforward. System can destroy the Goombas at will. High integrity levels are kind of what we're going to be looking at. If you need to go from a low integrity level to a medium integrity level, talk to James Forshaw. He's going to be presenting here in a second. He's done a lot of work with the Windows Sandbox, and I'll admit that it feels a little strange to give a presentation on this topic when James Forshaw is going to be presenting next, but such is life. Between medium integrity levels and high integrity levels within Windows, you're going to run into this pesky little I don't know what to call it, thing called UAC. Luckily for our purposes, UAC is not much of a barrier when we are running as a local admin, which is why, kind of in the summary of this talk, if you take away one thing, please do not run your users as local admins. I mean, I'm happy when you do that, but you really shouldn't do that. UAC is not a security boundary. So here's kind of the setup for the rest of this talk. We're going to land on a workstation within a Windows domain as the Luigi user. Again, he is actually a limited user. He's not a local admin running with UAC. He is a limited user. He's not in the local admin group. Via whatever method you choose. The most, I guess the most recent popular thing is Office documents with macros enabled that ask you to please run this macro, and then we can hop on your machine. And here we're trying to escalate privileges from, like I said, an actual limited user to a local admin because you never are going to run your users as admins, right? It's like this is a necessary step for an attacker, right? You don't run users as admins. That is bad. So here's kind of our game plan. First, we're going to look for many misconfigurations somewhere else. I actually see this a ton. A user that I have compromised, they're not a local admin on the box that they're on, but they've been, for some reason, configured as a local admin on other boxes within the domain. At that point, we can just ps-exec or whatever your favorite remote command execution method is. Then we're going to just look for some credentials in files and show some interesting places that files can have local admin credentials in them. Is that rain? Then we're going to look at exploiting any unpatched elevation of privilege bugs. These are going to be guys like James or Tavis Ormandy that have found bugs within Windows, and it could be any third-party software that's running with elevated privileges, but for these purposes, we're just going to do Windows. And then finally, we're going to look at exploiting insecure configurations or applications, services with weak permissions, any files with weak permissions. We're going to look at a registry setting that can be pushed via GPO called AlwaysInstallElevated that always installs elevated. And then we're going to look at some DLL fun. So first we're going to see about looking somewhere else. So we've landed on a workstation, a user that we've compromised via whatever method you so choose is running as a limited user, and we want to continue to try and compromise the rest of the domain. Like I said, one of the things you can do is try and look at other machines within that domain that have been misconfigured for whatever reasons. Someone has allowed that user to become a local admin to install some software, whatever it is, and they forget to take them back out. So one box in the domain that we're in is going to have the domain users group, which Luigi is a member of, configured as a local admin. When we do this, we can use a tool called PowerView. This is a part of a larger group of tools developed by some of the guys at the Varus group. Will Schroeder developed this tool. It's a PowerShell script that will essentially query the domain controller with our current user's token, ask them, hey, where are all the different boxes in the domain? What are the names of them? And then it will try and open up a handle to the service control manager. If it's successful, that means that we're able to PS exec or whatever you want to as a local admin to that box. And you can see the screenshot there. We're going to load the PowerShell script and then run the find local admin access, fairly straightforward command. And you can see that we get back one box where our current user is able to log into that box as a local admin. And you can see here that we've got the configuration on that machine. We run a net local groups for the administrator group, and the domain users group within the domain has been dropped in that group for whatever reason. Next, we can look for credentials and files. This can be as simple as passwords.xls on the desktop. Web config files. I don't actually see this on workstations as much, but definitely on servers. I have also seen backups of web config files that users are able to access, like on say a network share or something like that. Grab the credentials out of there, log into the database. The database is likely going to be running with either domain admin privileges or at least local admin privileges on that machine. Move from the database to the OS, and then you're off to the races. Unattended install files. This is another pretty big one. Here are some commands you can use to try and look for those on the machines that you're on. And then, yeah, finally any file that has pass in it is always useful. As well as group policy preferences. Who's heard of group policy preferences? A few people? Yeah, that's super cool for my purposes. Group policy preferences allows domain admins to specify local admin account or passwords. Those passwords are stored encrypted on the domain controller, which is good, right? The only problem is that Microsoft has published the private key to decrypt those values. So any user with access to the domain controller, which is going to be every user, can look for those files and decrypt that encrypted value to get the local admin. And also, just looking around on the domain control at all, I find hard-coded credentials and PowerShell auto exec files, batch files, those sorts of things. Next, we can look at any potential elevation of privilege bugs that we can exploit. Like I said, these can be Windows bugs, but they don't necessarily have to be. There was something, I think like a week ago, that came out with a Lenovo bug in some service that they run, where a low privilege user can pass some argument to a service which starts the device manager. At that point, you can load a malicious driver. Drivers are running the kernel, which is good for us. So these are two modules within Metasploit that can help you quickly kind of run through, hey, what are some interesting patches that we have exploits for, and are any of those missing on this machine? So I'm going to demo this one. This is going to be one of Tavis Ormandy's bugs that was patched in MS13.053. So here, we're going to confirm that we already have a session on the target as a low privilege user. You could dump the privileges. You can see that we don't have many privileges in our process. Load the exploit module. Configure it. Exploit's going to run. Then we confirm that we have elevated privileges. If the box is fully patched, we can look at service permissions. Most of the time, services are run with system privileges. Here, we're going to use the sysinternals access check tool that can dump the DACL for a whole lot of securable objects within Windows, registry keys, named pipes, processes, or threads. We're going to look for any misconfigurations with any users within the authenticated users group, the users group, or the everyone group, and we're going to search through every service. So a simple command like this can help you quickly identify any misconfigurations on third-party services. You're likely not going to find one on Windows 7. Well, you're not going to find one, but I think it was Windows XP, an earlier service pack in Windows XP had maybe the UPnP service was, you could reconfigure the UPnP service. I think that's right. So here in the screenshot, you can see that when we run the command for the everyone group, we get back read-write access for a service named codemeter.exe. At this point, we want to see if we can edit the where the service points to, as well as if we can edit the binary that this. So maybe we can't edit the service. The service doesn't have read-write permissions, but we could perhaps edit the binary that the service is currently pointing to by exploiting weak file permissions or weak directory permissions. I'm going to demo that one real quick. So here we're on the box again as the same user with low privileges. To confirm that, we're going to try and add a user to the machine and get an access denied. We've already enumerated on this box the service that we're going to go after. So we're going to use the Windows SC command to reconfigure the bin path to point to the net user binary so that we can add a user. It's going to look like, or we're going to restart the service and it looks like it fails. Do the same thing, except this time add that user that we just created to the local admin group. Try and restart the service again, and it looks like it fails. But when we run the net user command, we can see that a user has been added to the box, and that user is in the local admins group. Maybe. There we go. So next we're going to look for misconfigurations with files. This is extremely common, especially in third-party software. Here we're going to look for any files that we can write to with the current privileges that we have. Bonus points if those files are auto runs or they're kicked off by a scheduled task. A scheduled task can run with system permissions, and in auto runs we can backdoor the binary and wait for maybe a higher privilege user to log in if it's a multi-user system, which it likely is. Same kind of commands here, except we're going to change one flag. Use the access check tool again from sysinternals. Again, this is an extremely powerful tool. I highly recommend that you check it out if you're responsible for Windows machines. I'm not going to demo this one, but I have perhaps an interesting story. So sometimes I play games, if you haven't been able to figure that out by this presentation yet. Sometimes I get bored of playing those games, though, and I start to look for bugs within the games themselves. In this case, the main application binary was writable by anyone in the user's group. In addition, it was auto-run on a login. Reporting it to the vendor, I received this kind yet uninformed email in return, which essentially just says, we're good, UAC protects us, or it protects you rather as the user of this software. Now, like I said, this highlights a very important thing to note about what UAC is, or rather what UAC is not. UAC is not a security boundary. As an admin, the little pop-up box that you receive is not a security boundary. They're public ways, publicly documented methods and techniques for bypassing UAC if you are a local admin, thanks to a Windows feature called Auto Elevate. And this is a really important thing because I run into a lot of cases where clients are designing their architecture on their systems with UAC in mind as a security boundary. This is why it's very important to make sure that you're running as limited users and not local admins, and not making this mistake. So what would an attack path be for a case like this? Someone who's in the local admin group logs in and wants to play games because no one ever has games on their work computers, right? Nobody. That doesn't happen. So an admin logs in. We have backdoored a binary or just overwritten it if we're sloppy with something that is malicious. So at this stage, we have code execution at a medium integrity level as a local admin. And I tried to go back and forth with this particular vendor and say, look, this is still not okay that anyone on the machine in the user's group can overwrite your binary. But he or she was not particularly interested in that conversation. And if up until this point you've been like, well, yeah, actually I think UAC is a security boundary, don't take my word for it, because there are multiple MSDN articles where Microsoft has essentially said UAC is not a security boundary. A local admin in a medium integrity process should still be considered a local admin. So again, that is not a security boundary. Another interesting one is the AlwaysInstallElevated group policy setting that you can set. And I sympathize with this one because this is a good idea at the start until you think about it and think about the fact that UAC is not, again, UAC is not a security boundary. This essentially allows any user where this is enabled, you can install MSI package files with system privileges. So, and I sympathize with this one because you have your marketing person or whatever who wants to install patches or updates or something like that, and they want to do it without having to have a local admin come and do that for them. It's kind of an issue, right? But this illustrates the kind of proverbial trade-off between security and usability, because any MSI can be installed, which means we can build an MSI to do something that is not good and try and install that, and it will yield us system privileges. You can check for this very quickly. Again, these are not like crazy complicated things to do. You have to query 2 registry settings. There are the commands to do that, and then we'll demo this real quick. Here we start on the same thing. We have a low privileged code execution, a low privileged user. We're going to query these 2 registry keys. As we can see, the first one is set. Second one is set. You can build your own MSI to do as you wish, but in this case, for the demo purposes, I'm going to use Metasploit, as Metasploit does have a module for this. The module is going to check for the 2 registry settings that we just manually checked for to make sure that they're enabled. Run MSI exec with the package that it builds. And then you can see we get back command execution with higher privileges. Another fun one. This one is not as common. I just like it, so I put it in this deck. So Windows can dynamically load DLLs. There's a decent amount of security effort focused on the spawning of processes, but not so much with the loading of DLLs, both places we can execute code from. If the application loads a DLL and doesn't give a fully qualified path, Windows will execute the Windows search order. There was a lot of talk about DLL hijacking in 2010, and again, I just think it's interesting, so I threw it in here. It's kind of my fallback, I guess, if I'm on an engagement and some of the techniques that I just showed you haven't worked. So here's the search order. The good news for us is that the last 2 are potentially exploitable. Most of the DLL hijacking attacks I've seen that are public are going after the current directory. There was a recent one, Greg Linares reported a bug to Microsoft in Windows 10 will look for phoneinfo.dll when, I think it's Edge, I think it's when Edge is launched or Internet Explorer, as well as Skype, a bunch of different applications that use a library that looks for this library. But in a lot of cases, that's not really privilege escalation. So why is that in here? If a privileged application, and again, this kind of gets back to the methodology that we've talked about before, thinking about, what is my attack surface as far as privileged applications go, and then how can I influence that in a way that would benefit me. So a privileged application can load a DLL that's maybe missing. Maybe they have updated the code base and there's no longer the use for a particular DLL, and instead of commenting it out, they just say, who cares, doesn't matter. We combine this with weak directory permissions so like a writable path, for instance. Again, that's the path is going to be the final location that Windows will look for DLLs when it runs a search. So we combine a missing DLL with a writable path. We can potentially execute code with privileges of a higher application. I actually reported an issue to another vendor that is of this nature that I was hoping to be able to show you today, but that is still in vendor land. Oh, so to find these kinds of issues, it's, again, fairly simple. You can use sysinternal's procmon tool. If you haven't figured it out yet, sysinternal's suite is extremely powerful. Go use it, learn it, love it. You'll want to set a filter to include DLLs with name not found as the result, as well as just a folder in your path, and then launch the applications that you're interested in looking at. You might be surprised what you see. I'll demo that as well. This is actually, this particular exploit or attack was discovered by Parvez Anwar and Ben Campbell with MWR in the UK, wrote a Metasploit module for it. It's going to look for, let me see what the name of it's the Ike auth IP IPsec keying module service in all versions of Windows 7, loads a DLL that loads a dependent DLL called ikeext.dll that does not exist, or no, it's called WLBScontrol.dll that does not exist in any version of Windows 7. The only thing about this particular attack is that you're going to have to reboot the box to trigger the service, because a low privilege user is not going to be able to restart the service by default. So here we're going to load the module. We've already determined that Python is installed on the machine that we're looking at and is writable. Again, this is easily done manually. It's just faster to use the module. So there it's going to write the DLL to the folder that we specified. We're going to run it as a job and then reboot the box if we can run the right command. When the box comes back on, the service will kick off, look for this DLL. It's not supposed to exist, but it does in this case. It will load it, and then we'll have code execution as if we were the service, so system privileges. So some conclusions, I'm going to echo the NSA Tau guy that spoke at EnigmaConf. He essentially said that the biggest thing he can tell people who are on defense is know your network, know what's on your network, know the third-party applications that are installed on your boxes. If I can show up in a week and I can know your network better than you can, that's probably going to end up bad for you. Again, don't at all costs, do not run as a local admin. This is a critical piece in the successful attack chain in Windows environments. If local admin, I mean, I don't have a statistic on it. That would be interesting to do, actually. I don't have a statistic on it, but admin access on a workstation that is within a domain has almost always led to the downfall of the entire domain. So making that difficult for an attacker is an extremely important piece of breaking the successful attack chain. Patch your shit. It's fairly straightforward. And then again, I was hoping with this talk to give you some ways to look for some of the things that I'm going to look for if I show up on your doorstep. So knowing offense, using offense to inform defense is an extremely important thing. Some tools to automate this kind of thing. Not everybody has the time to dick around with it like I do. First, Power Up. Again, it's going to be by the guys at Varus Group. Will Schroeder wrote this one. It'll automate the enumeration of some of the things that I just showed you, as well as a few other things. Extremely useful PowerShell module. Script it out, run it across all the boxes in your domain, and fix whatever it finds. Windows Privest Check. This is by Pen Test Monkey. Yeah, it's the Portcullis guys. And Bernardo Demale, I think. He works at NCC Group. And then finally, the sysinternal suite. Again, it's extremely powerful for doing analysis of Windows boxes. Can help you out in many ways. Here's some other references and resources. Of note is this first talk. This was by Brett Moore. I think at RuxCon, maybe like, talks a lot about Windows XP, so maybe 4 or 5 years ago. This is an incredibly good talk. If you are in offense and you haven't watched this talk, I would highly suggest it, as well as some of these other references that you can check out. That's all I've got. Questions? 2 questions. First question here.
A lot of larger companies are going to have automated patching, and that's going to use, okay, thank you. A lot of large companies are going to use an automated patching service, or they're going to have monitoring, and those are going to be running with administrative privileges. You didn't mention leveraging that to exploit boxes. Would you consider that to also be something of concern, and how could you protect against exploiting that, if you could?
You're talking about like agents, like a monitoring agent on a machine?
SCCM to deploy patching?
Yeah, so there was actually an interesting talk by another guy at the Varus Group on using SCCM to infect the entire domain. That's kind of what you're talking about?
No, so in order to install the patches on the box, you have to have an account on the box that it can log into, and that account has to have administrative privileges in order to install the patches. If you take local admin away, the users can't, then the users can't install their own patches. So now you have to manually push out patches. So you have to have an account that's active on the box. Do you leverage the account that's used by, say, SCCM to go in and push that down with?
Yeah, so most implementations of that I've seen are going to be service accounts within Windows, and the main concern with those is just going to be weak passwords. I've seen service accounts for like application stack management where the username is the same as the password. That's going to be not good. Is that helpful, or?
Yeah, I was just wondering if you had taken, if you leveraged that account in order to exploit, other than cracking the password. Is there another way that you've leveraged that to gain privileges on the box?
Yeah, if I compromise that account, then I have access to everything that account has access to. I don't know if...
No, so what I'm saying is that there's an account on the box. Do you leverage the admin account that I now have to put on the box because I've taken the administrative privileges away from the user? So you log in the box, you go and you look, and you had just like Luigi before,
right?
But now you're going to have this patching account that has administrative privileges. Is that a vector that you attack?
Yeah. Yeah, if I don't have access to a Luigi and I have access to a service account or some account that's used to deploy patches or something like that, it's going to give me access to any machine within the domain that account is used to log in with and patch boxes with.
Is there a way to protect against that?
The biggest, I mean, the most common thing that I see as far as that goes is just, again, weak passwords. Use a really strong password for service accounts. Service accounts aren't necessarily bad. If I'm able to compromise a machine that your service account is logging into, you've already lost, because I've achieved local admin on that box. Your service account interactively logs in or does whatever it needs to do, scrape those credentials out of memory, and then on I go. So the biggest thing I would say with that is protect your workstations, and assume that the boxes that you're trying to defend are going to be compromised. Like, assume Kevin in marketing, if you're logging into his box with a trust relationship, a one-way trust relationship, assume that you're on dangerous territory, because he's browsing the internet with an unpatched version of Firefox, or he's downloading macros and downloading Word documents and executing macros, whatever. Try and think of your perimeter not just as, oh, your firewalls, or oh, your IDS and your IPS. Like, assuming compromise on those boxes is an extremely interesting and useful exercise to kind of run through.
Right. So what we do is we look for, is that account being used for like an RDP session, which it should never be used for? And
right.
that would be,
yeah, absolutely.
So we look for those types of things. But I was wondering if there was any way else.
Yeah. The monitoring
catch-22
aspect is huge. If you can monitor and do some sort of like anomaly detection, a service, like you said, a service account shouldn't be logging in over RDP, and it shouldn't be doing strange things. That's definitely something that is worth checking out, monitoring, getting some sort of baseline for accounts that you have and what they should be doing or normally do, and then look at that. Microsoft Advance, it's ATA. I forget what the full acronym is, but they're doing a lot of work in that area. I think you have to buy that at this stage, but they're trying to take that idea, baselining. Kevin only logs in during these times. Here are the kind of things that he typically accesses. Are there deviations from that? And if so, that could be an indicator of compromise.
Nice. Thank you.
Yep. Other questions? Yeah, one in the back.
For that demo that you did of the replacing the service with the weak service ACLs, have you heard of ServCheck 3? It's an executable that automates that process and simplifies it, as well as the enumeration. I just thought I'd mention
Yeah, no, I actually haven't heard of that one. That's awesome. ServCheck 3?
Yeah, SRV Check 3.
Cool.
Yeah, it's really useful.
Awesome. Thanks.
No
Yeah, I'll
problem.
check that out. Any other questions? Hard to see the top. Cool. Thank you.